Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast discussing meditation, the near-death experience, spiritually inspirational and transformative experiences. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, author and teacher Jay Spillers. Please do like and subscribe to the channel and share everywhere. I have a guest today, Liezl. Liezl, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Liezl Laidlaw, and my company is called Rewire Therapy. I am an online therapist for ADHDers and also a mindfulness teacher for ADHDers. And I am an ADHDer myself.
Okay, so how did you get into meditation?
By being really uncomfortable. When I started feeling like there really wasn't any peace in my head, I was working in change management in financial services in the city, and I could not get a break. It didn't matter if I'd set time aside for myself, I just couldn't relax. And as it now turns out, I was squarely hitting perimenopause, which makes that much harder for women, especially women who are ADHDers. And I needed to find a way to slow my mind down. So I asked my yoga teacher if they had any advice, because that last bit in a yoga session where, you often go and have a little lie down and you're doing some slow breathing, felt like that's where I could get a bit of peace. But I couldn't work out how I could spread that throughout my day. And the yoga teacher recommended having a go at mindfulness. So I did, and that changed my life. I no longer work as a change management contractor. I now work full-time as a therapist and a mindfulness teacher.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but like there's a practice in yoga that's very
Mm,
similar to meditation, like a deep relaxation. It's called yoga
mm.
nidra.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the bit I was describing at the end of the body practices, is the yoga nidra. And yeah, that definitely made such a difference. But it also helped that I had done some physical movement before I got to that point, because it allows you to settle more deeply into it when that comes.
And so, how many years ago was you get into mindfulness?
I think it must be about 7 years ago now. Um, Trying to work out, maybe 8 actually. Yeah, it took me a good long time to get settled into it. Um, as an ADHDer, sometimes taking in information and building new habits can take longer. But I was determined because I kept getting little glimpses and moments of when I could find peace, when I could settle in with myself without having to feel like I needed to be doing or thinking something right there and then. So I was committed to it once I realized that actually I was going to benefit from this.
And do you do a formal mindfulness meditation each day?
The way I practice isn't necessarily sitting cross-legged on a cushion. This is how most people imagine formal mindfulness practice to go. I do it wherever I am. So I can be in bed and do it. I can be on the sofa and do it. I can be in my office chair and do it. I give myself a physical focus, like this is a little bead bracelet that I would use to, as I'm focusing on the breath, I'll shift my thumb up one end of the bead, and as I'm breathing out, down the other, and so on. And once I've gone all the way around, I've done 21 breaths because there's 21 beads on this bracelet. I know that because I counted. So I don't have to bring in any counting when I'm doing it. Um, Having done the 21 mindful breaths, I can then go, okay, now let's pay attention to the body. And I can do that anywhere. I don't have to be sitting in lotus position in a quiet place. So yeah, I do it every day. I don't always do it at the same time. I do it when I've got a space, but I do make space for it every day.
Hmm. Well, I mean, with the beads, it almost reminds you of like, when the Catholics pray the rosary, because they count the rosary and then they pray this. I mean, I'm not
Mhm,
Catholic, but maybe that's
mhm.
kind of almost a mindful practice in itself.
I suspect it has something to do with that, and Buddhists have beads as well, and I think that's to do with saying a mantra or a prayer and then counting how many times you've said it as you go. So again, what you're doing is you're using a physical thing to anchor your attention, instead of just going, "I'm gonna really concentrate now." You give yourself a way to make it easier.
Hmm. But do you do like mindfulness in your day-to-day living, like if you're doing dishes or, petting
Mhm.
the dog or something like that?
As time goes on, the more we practice mindfulness, the more it kind of leaks into your life. Um, it leaks into the way you think about things. It leaks into the way you do things, how you approach difficulty, how you approach joy. It's so the course I originally did was called mindfulness-based living, not we're treating you for something that's wrong, not you're gonna be enlightened in 8 weeks. It's how to live mindfully. So it's not just about sitting still, it's also about being able to move mindfully. So if you're going to walk to the shop, you can use that time to be mindful about walking by paying attention to how you anchor your feet on the ground each step. You can recognize when you feel a spike in emotion coming up. You can go, I recognize a spike in emotion, and name the emotion and be with that emotion and give yourself kindness in a moment when that's happening. But I can only do that now because of my mindfulness practice of the years I've been doing it.
And there's so many different things that you can attach your mind to, because you've
Mhm,
got five senses. Some people do like the five senses, and like
mhm,
a body scan sometimes, which is kind of separated out into its own thing. But
mhm.
that's sort of a mindfulness meditation too. You like focus on different parts of your body working up or down.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mindfulness practice as well.
Yeah, it's included in the course that I learned mindfulness in, and it's also included in the course that I use for ADHDers. But I will say that the way I do it with ADHDers is quite different from how you would have it in a standard course because I don't have people lying down still. I would encourage them to decide whether they would like to touch the parts of the body that they're concentrating on. So that, again, you're bringing in the sense of touch instead of just sort of abstractly lying there trying to focus on a specific part of your body, because that can get a little bit difficult to anchor to, if your mind has a tendency to wander more than most, especially as ADHDers do. So I would suggest if you're going to do a body scan, you can stand up doing it if you want. You can sway with your breath, left for the in, right for the out, if that feels right. You can touch the bits of the body that you're focusing on, um, and you can decide if you want to skip any bits of the body that you don't want to pay attention to, if there's any, uncomfortable connection with that part of the body. We don't have to always force ourselves to sit with discomfort. Sometimes the kind thing is to skip it.
Well, and I have heard that meditation can be helpful for conditions like ADHD and like minor autism and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, like you talked about standing because
Hmm.
one type of mindfulness is like is a walking meditation where you walk around and you kind of observe things around you and take in
Hmm.
the sights and the sounds and smells. And is that like a really good one for ADHD as a walking one?
Yeah, totally. Using your body when it comes to ADHD is one of the best ways of grabbing your own attention. You will notice that people who try to support themselves without medication on ADHD very often are well involved in some physical form of activity because it gives the brain a job. And after having moved well, it's easier for us to settle into any kind of concentration of any kind. So um, that's why when we are paying attention to the body in a kind way, in a way that's possible for us, not in a way that makes it hard, i.e., sit there and sit still, then it can really help. And like the intentional training of attention is something that you can expand over time. So you can train yourself to choose what you're going to focus on. And that's where we use the senses in mindfulness. So it might be something that you're looking at. It may be something that you're listening to. It might be something you can smell, something you can taste, something you can touch, for example. Um, and sometimes you might want to combine more than one of your senses to make it even more of an anchor for what you're trying to focus on. And in the same way as when you're standard meditating, you're bringing your attention back to whatever you're focusing on. So maybe breathing. If you've chosen a different anchor, like sound, like sight, when you recognize your mind taking you off into thinking, planning, worrying, you get to recognize that and choose to bring it back to the focus that you've chosen, i.e., sound, sight, etc.
Hmm. Well, like with ADHD people, is
Mhm,
there any kind of special techniques or concerns? Because obviously you said standing sometimes is good and
mhm,
walking
mhm.
meditation. Is there any other thing that you have to be concerned with that maybe you tailor to them in addition to any
Yeah,
of that?
sure. So I wouldn't say it's anything to be concerned about. I would say it's more like what works for you, what works for this body right now. It's giving people permission to attend to their needs in the moment. For ADHDers, it can, depending on what kind of ADHDer you are, it can be really hard to sit still. It can be really hard to be quiet. And the messages that we've had over our lifetimes, especially if we're late diagnosed, can be so invalidating that, if you don't feel like you're achieving the thing you're trying to achieve in the first minute, you might want to give up. Um, so that's why I make it really clear to my participants that you choose the posture you're going to be in when you practice. You can change your posture as many times as you like. Because we practice online, it means that if you want to, you can switch your camera off, so that you don't have to feel that other people are watching if you move. Or you can have your camera on and none of us are going to blink an eye because we're all doing the same thing. And so it could be moving, it could be standing, it could be reclining, and it helps to give your body support by having it aligned and having it balanced so that you're not hurting your muscles or your tendons. But if today you're just done in and actually slouching a bit would help for 10 minutes, is that going to be the end of the world? Of course not. I don't do practices for as long as quote unquote standard mindfulness courses would recommend, because I find it is more of a challenge for people with ADHD in particular. So I do them shorter, but they work just as well. They bring the same kind of benefits in practice that we're looking for from mindfulness. So it's really giving people the choice to work out what's right for themselves right now so they can practice that. Because in real life, we don't really get that opportunity to practice being okay with our own choices.
Well, and that's a good thing sometimes with meditation is when people are first starting,
Mhm,
sometimes you just start with shorter sessions and gradually work up, like you might
mhm.
start with a few minutes, 5 minutes or something, and then over time you just kind of gradually work up to a longer period. Are they able to eventually work up to longer periods of time?
It's a good question, and it's one that I have to answer with it depends. Every neurodivergent person you've met in your life is different from the next neurodivergent person you're likely to meet. Um, People have different kinds of challenges and different kinds of strengths. And so, yes, we can all stretch what we've got, but there's no guarantee we're all going to get to the same point. And that's okay because we're different. I have a friend who's an ex Buddhist monk who used to run 4-year retreats for new monks. And I said to him, see, when you did that, how did you deal with people who had ADHD? Because obviously there would be, there'd be a subset of monks who had ADHD. And he said, well, for a start, we didn't have any alphabet soup diagnoses back then. And so what we had to do is we had to recognize that if someone couldn't sit for an hour, they could sit for half an hour. If they couldn't sit for half an hour, they could sit for 15 minutes. If they couldn't sit for 15 minutes, 5 would do. And if one was where they could start, that's what we did. And so what that illustrates is that even before it was possible to recognize anyone as an adult ADHDer, there were ways of approaching this. You look at what you can do and you do that.
Hmm. Well, so is neurodivergent, is that the same thing as ADHD, or is that a broader category that encompasses more than just ADHD?
So it encompasses more than ADHD. It encompasses things like autism. It encompasses things like Tourette's. There's a whole pile of different things. So really, the original meaning of neurodivergent means to diverge from the norm. So neuronormative or neurotypical would be the opposite of neurodivergent. So it covers a whole pile of different ways for brains to be. So there might be things like dyslexia, like dyscalculia, like dyspraxia. All those things are included in the umbrella under neurodivergence, but there's a whole lot more than that. And there are some forms of neurodivergence that are acquired. So when somebody's had a brain injury, for example, or if they've had a traumatic incident, then their brain can start working differently. But most forms of neurodivergence are from birth and associated with genetic stuff they got from their parents. Now we're in hot
Mhm.
water, right?
Well, it's like, is OCD part of the neurodivergent category as well?
Yes, it is. And to be fair, anything like anxiety or depression could also be included in there because it's seen as diverging from the neurotypical. So you might be temporarily neurodivergent while you're struggling with something like depression or anxiety. But most people who are neurodivergent are lifelong neurodivergent because of the genetic stuff that's happened rather than their environment around them making them neurodivergent.
Hmm. Well, it seemed like maybe for some people with OCD, if they
Hmm.
were counting a meditation beat as they do breaths, some of them might
Hmm.
really like that, because you have a certain
Yeah,
pattern you're doing,
sure.
you know.
Yeah. I do find that when I teach ways to anchor yourself, that I want to give people the choice to either use numbers or not. Because for some people, let's say you struggle with dyscalculia and numbers really make you uncomfortable. It's not going to help to settle your mind to try and count to 3 or 4 on the in breath and count to 3 or 4 on the out breath. It's more likely to actually make you stressed. Whereas for some other people, it might feel really comfortable counting the breaths, going, this is breath one, this is breath two, because it keeps the attention where they are. So yeah, for folks who are OCD, numbers may bring some comfort, but we
Hmm.
need to be aware that it's not all about comfort. It's about practice. It's not about achievement, it's about practice.
Hmm.
The more we practice, the more we benefit. But the peace that you get is a side effect, and it's not going to be there every time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've done some of those counting breath ones, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's kind of it's sometimes like your mind wanders, and then you come
Hmm.
back and you're like, oh, okay, what breath was I supposed to be on? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess
that's why I do the beat
you have
thing
to be
because I
willing
don't
to
have
just
to
let it
worry about
go.
where I am.
Mhm. So, like in terms of ADHD, do you get into other things like diet and exercise, or are you just focused specifically on the mindfulness aspect to help them?
So when I'm teaching mindfulness, I stay in my lane. um, what I
Mhm.
teach is what we're learning here is how to look after ourselves, right? How people choose to do that is their own business. But what we learn as we learn mindfulness is to start caring for this body that I'm in, to start prioritizing it as my home. And with that, naturally, people start going, well, maybe I won't eat a burger. Maybe I just won't have a drink tonight. Or maybe I'll actually take myself out for some fresh air because I feel nice when I do it and I matter and that's why I'll do it. But that comes organically. I don't sit there and go, if you're going to be mindful, how can you be abusing your body in that way, you know? It comes as a sort of byproduct of starting to care for yourself.
Well, do some of the people that have ADHD come back in a few weeks and say that their symptoms of ADHD are lessened?
Well, we're not actually trying to quote unquote treat ADHD here. We're just trying to make mindfulness approachable for people who are ADHDers. I am also a therapist, and so there we might do things that are more specific to do with what comes with ADHD. But when we're teaching mindfulness, that's a separate thing. And the point of learning mindfulness is that it brings almost everyone some good benefits. Now, those benefits for ADHDers could be things that are specific to ADHD. For example, you can train your attention to stretch a bit more than it used to be able to. You can train your emotional regulation by being able to recognize physical sensations or emotions popping up and knowing what's likely to happen next when they come up, so that you have the opportunity to pause and respond as opposed to just react instantly in a sort of matter of fact way, the way you always do. And so in that way, it affects how people are able to study. It affects how people's relationships go. It helps how people act at work, um, how they are with their children, how they approach difficulties, how they approach challenges in sport, for example. So yeah, ADHDers can absolutely benefit from mindfulness, but we're not looking at it as a treatment or a cure, because in my opinion, and many people will throw things at the device that they're listening to, in my opinion, ADHD is not a disease. It's a way of being. It's a type of brain that we inherited, and therefore it's not to be cured. It's just something that we need to be aware of. There are some traits that we need to take care of in our lives to make it easier for ourselves.
And when did you start your company?
I started, in fact, I mean, this week I've been on Facebook for 3 years. And I've been practicing for just a little bit longer than that, but my company is 3 years old now, so I'm feeling quite triumphant having got there. Thank you.
Well, do you have other people that work with you? Or are you solo or?
Yeah, at the moment I'm a sole trader. I totally love working for myself. I am the best boss I've ever had. Um, and it really works out because our child is home educated, because they are autistic, and it became very clear that the school wasn't going to be able to support them in the way they needed it. Attainment isn't all you get at school. If you're doing well enough at school, but actually it's making you ill, or it's making you anxious, then it's not the right place to be if people are not going to find new ways to support you. So we decided to home educate just over a year ago. So it helps me to be able to work from home in that way. Um, and at the moment, it's not big enough for me to employ anyone else, but as time goes on, who knows? You know, if there's some collaboration in the meantime, I'm up for that. I have been working with Christoph Spiessens from the Manchester Mindfulness Festival recently on teaching other mindfulness teachers how to be more neuro-inclusive in their training, in their teaching of mindfulness. Because like you mentioned, the body scan can be a big deal if people are not aware of what might be going on for their neurodivergent participants. And we're going to be doing another workshop like that with BAMBA, which is the industry body for mindfulness teachers, in January. So I'm really looking forward to collaborating with him again.
And have you worked with some people that have autism in meditation?
hmm Um, like I said, the home educated child is autistic, and that means that she got it from somewhere, and I suspect it's me. Um, which means I have some lived experience of this. But yes, what often happens is that a very high percentage of ADHDers also have overlap with autism. So they might be known as ADHD. And I have also worked with people who are mainly autistic, and the needs vary, right? So someone with clear ADHD might have different needs and priorities from someone with autism. But again, because each person is very different, you can't generalize and go, you can't put autistic people with ADHDers because it's going to be a mess. Um, it really matters to work out whether the people in front of you are going to be able to be in a group together, are going to have the same needs. So let's say someone has misophonia. So for example, they struggle with certain sounds. Uh, that's one participant. And another participant, has echolalia, so they have to make sounds regularly, and they can't help it. It's automatic. It may be very difficult for those two people to be in the same cohort. It may be part of the mindful practice for them both to be able to accept each other and recognize that this is how it is, and we can sit with things that are difficult. But it may be that they can't, in which case, that's when the teacher has to be mindful of working out what the options are, what the choices are each participant could make, seeing if there's some way of accommodating both or not. And sometimes, unfortunately, you can't accommodate people. You do your best to accommodate as far as you can, but there are some circumstances where you're not going to be able to accommodate everyone. So it is easier to try and combine particular needs together so that you don't end up with those kind of opposite kind of needs in the same class.
So, do you teach both in person and online?
I work mostly online because where I live, there's more sheep than people. And so it's easier to access participants online. But also the benefit of working online is that many neurodivergent people will have run out of steam by the time they've done their day's work, right? They don't have the energy to get in a car and drive somewhere to go and meet a whole pile of new people in a place that isn't their house, in clothes that they wouldn't necessarily be wearing at that time of night. And then the same on the way back, you go and sit and you do your class for an hour or 2 hours, depending on what the class is, and then have to travel back home again. It can be too much. And so this actually working on that online makes it more accessible to many people than it would be otherwise.
Well, do you find that like music and meditation is generally helpful for ADHD or neutral or not
Hmm.
good?
Depends on the day, depends on the person. I've heard uh, some of my participants say that they really manage to focus very well with some heavy metal. Um, some others would like some very light and gentle piano music in the background while they're meditating. If Oh, I think you've disappeared.
from stage.
You're back.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened. Was that just a timing
Yeah, it
thing?
just kept recording. Yeah.
Painful.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll just edit it out on the regular one. But you were talking about music.
Yes, so I was saying how some people would be very mindful with heavy metal, and some people would need very quiet piano music or something Eastern sounding. And some people can't stand sound, right? So it's very individual. It depends on what works, and it also depends on your state of mind. Like some days you're going to be able to concentrate really well and focus really well with music, and some other days it's going to be too much, and actually silence is what you need. Um, so what mindfulness teaches us is to check in with our needs in the moment because it changes from moment to moment. And so saying just because on Tuesday I was a metalhead doesn't mean that on Thursday I still need to be. It might not work at all. And in fact, I can't expect myself to perform or experience things in exactly the same way every time.
So, where can people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
So I'm online. I'm on all the W's, rewiretherapy.co.uk. I'm on Facebook as Rewire Therapy. I'm on Instagram as well, and on LinkedIn as Liezl Laidlaw. And in January, if you're a therapist, I'm going to be running an online mindfulness course for therapists. So now I'm working with the people who work with the ADHDers. And they don't have to necessarily work with ADHDers, but therapists are a group that are particular, who have particular needs and particular experiences that are not the same as other people. And so I'm hoping that gathering them all in a cohort together will offer some more safety and some more comfort to practice together with other people who know what life's like for them. So that's the next move, is teaching mindfulness to therapists, and we'll see how that benefits them and their clients.
Is there like one final word you'd like to leave the audience with?
I guess the final word I'd like to leave the audience with is permission. What we learn from mindfulness is to give ourselves permission to give ourselves what we need without having to ask someone else for that permission. We learn to give it to ourselves. So if you need to shift in position, go and shift. If you need to make it longer or shorter, do that. If standing works better for you or sound works better for you, do that. But check in with yourself about what you need right now. Give yourself permission.
Well, thanks for being on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.